The French Revolution. The background first. To speak of France as it evolved through the Middle Ages and the end of the Middle Ages into the modern world is to speak of the development of what we may call absolute divine right monarchy. Absolute meaning total control. Divine right argues that the authority to rule by that monarch comes directly from God. Whether his subjects would believe that or not, they think it's wise to believe it for their own safety's sake, it increases the power of that monarch to make that claim that they rule through direction from God. Monarchy itself, the word, a single ruler, by inheritance, father to son, sometimes daughters. Absolute divine right monarchy reached its epitome in French history. And the monarch that shows this, perhaps more than any other, and this is where I want to begin our tale that will culminate in the French Revolution, is the monarchy of Louis XIV. A child when he technically became king, through a regency of advisors until he reaches his maturity. We're talking about the last part of the 1600s up to the time of his death in 1715. Louis XIV was not some figurehead. He certainly had important advisors. But here is an actual ruler who is on top of things in his domain. I want to speak of certain elements of his rule, as will affect the future of France particularly. Louis XIV was engaged in his long reign in a series of wars. Wars whose goal was basically to expand the territory of France, to expand its power in Europe. France was perhaps the single most powerful country in Europe, and yet Louis XIV failed in his goals to expand that territory substantially. The reason for this is that coalitions would form to prevent France from making those kind of gains. These wars cost a great deal of money, as wars of course do. How were they paid for? They were paid for by taxation. And the taxation in France, which went back centuries, stipulated clearly that those who paid the taxes were the commoners. That is to say, not the clergy, not the nobility. The commoners paid the taxes. And most of the commoners would be lowly peasants. To put it another way, those who had least money, they paid the taxes. Those who had the money did not pay taxes at all. And if that sounds familiar to you, so be it. This was the taxation policy. So the wars were a heavy burden on those peasants who paid the bulk of the taxation necessary. As far as expenditures are concerned, a special case needs to be said for the building of Versailles. Versailles was the court city that Louis XIV had built, took many years to build, outside of the city of Paris. No expense was spared. Incredible elaborateness that one can see today as a tourist site in France. The waterways, the shrubbery, all the landscaping, following careful symmetry, all very expensive. The famous Hall of Mirrors, the long corridor of mirrors, very expensive. No expense spared. Louis XIV building of Versailles, apart from the practical aspect of it to suit his court, also had other purposes. One would simply be the egomania of Louis XIV, a characteristic that he undoubtedly shared with most monarchs. But in addition to that egomania, Louis XIV was called the Sun King, as the sun around which the rest of the solar system revolves, the center of all things.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?